Star Wars 7x7, episode 2843. So it's a What to Watch Now Saturday episode, and today we're going to talk about a brand new release, which is quite fun. It is another episode of the High Republic show, and we'll cover 5 highlights from it today. Punch it! Hey Rebel Rouser, I'm Alan Voivod and this is Star Wars 7x7, your daily dose of Star Wars joy, and thank you so much for joining me for it. So I would say this episode of the High Republic show is the final episode of Phase 1 of the High Republic. Its timeline feature, which is always fabulous and very well done, features a lot of these stories that wrap up Phase 1, including Midnight Horizon and Mission to Disaster, the final issues of the High Republic Adventures and the High Republic, as well as Eye of the Storm and Trail of Shadows. Yeah, it is a whopper of a timeline update. And I'll tell you, if you're looking for a supercut kind of situation to catch you up on what's been happening with the High Republic, if you feel like there's stuff that you've missed, the timeline segments on Christina Ariel's High Republic show really are fantastic. I think the only things from a High Republic storytelling perspective that they haven't covered are the short stories in Star Wars Insider magazine and possibly what happens in the Tales from the Galaxy's Edge. But everything else is pretty much covered, including the manga, The Edge of Balance. Actually, Volume 1 was covered. I don't know if Volume 2 has been covered on the timeline, but it really is a super thorough, terrific resource. In fact, I hope at some point Lucasfilm will decide, oh yeah, let's just put all the timeline things together in one video and have it available. That would really be convenient. So yeah, that's part 1 of the High Republic show, the timeline situation that happens, which is always great. The second part of the show is usually an interesting feature, a behind the scenes kind of thing, perhaps. That's what it is this time. They introduce us to the new writers joining the High Republic Storytelling Initiative. 3 of those writers have already done Star Wars storytelling, and one of them is brand new. That's Tessa Gratton, and we'll be talking about her a little bit later here on the podcast. The writers who have previously worked on Star Wars projects include Zoraida Cordova, who wrote A Crash of Fate, one of the Galaxy's Edge tie-in books, and also a short story and From a Certain Point of View for Empire Strikes Back. Also Lydia Kang, who wrote a short story for that same From a Certain Point of View. And George Mann, probably best known for Star Wars Myths and Fables and Dark Legends and the Life Day Treasury. He is part of this initiative now too. The featurette is laid out like an interview montage where they're just giving answers to the questions that they've been asked, but we don't get to hear the actual questions that they were asked. But it's stuff like, what are some of your earliest Star Wars memories, favorite Star Wars memories, things that you connect with in relation to Star Wars, what it was like to get the call to join the High Republic Storytelling Initiative, that sort of thing. And for myself, I felt like I really liked the answer from George Mann about Star Wars being about found families and whatnot. I think Lydia Kang's answers out of everyone's really kind of resonated with me the most. She actually leaned in a little bit, and I'm sure she could have gone a lot farther with this, but talking about how, Star Wars novels reflect what's happening in the real world, and she seems willing to make a connection with even more current events in that regard. So I'm really kind of fascinated to see what she does with her storytelling, whatever that's going to be. And she also shared that during the pandemic, she started making crocheted Grogus and showed an example of one in the video. It looks really, really cool. Then the third feature on the show is usually a roundtable discussion, and that's what it is this time too. And this time it features Justina Ireland and Charles Soule, who are of course 2 of the original 5 story architects for the High Republic Initiative, and also Rob Simpson from Lucasfilm Publishing. I think one of my favorite bits out of the roundtable conversation was the moments that Christina Ariel and Charles Soule had talking about Marchion Ro and his background and the generational trauma, as it was described, that he has, and Christina Ariel saying that in a different world or in a different circumstance, he might have been building instead of tearing down. Also, a brief conversation that could have gone on a bit longer and would have been cool about hair as a means of self-expression with the High Republic, and in particular with Keeve Trennis, knowing that all the Jedi were going to have very similar uniforms throughout the course of this High Republic storytelling. They're looking for ways where people can demonstrate self-expression, and hair is one of those big places for it. And food is a big thing too in the High Republic, which is fun and certainly different from other Star Wars storytelling, but it turns out that there might be a little bit of a nudge there because Rob Simpson actually also oversees Star Wars cookbooks. And so, yeah, he's got a little bit of an angle on that, in addition to overseeing all the comics and the manga as well. Moving on to the fourth phase of the High Republic show. This is the High Republic questions phase, where Christina Ariel answers questions that have been submitted and tagged with the Twitter hashtag. And this time she jokes that there doesn't have to be just one expert responding to questions. So she has an all-star cast of people responding to the THRS questions, excuse me, this time around. From the story architect side of things, it's Justina Ireland and Charles Soule and Daniel Jose Older. From the Lucasfilm side of the house, it's Jen Heddle and Rob Simpson and Emily Skokani and Kelsey Sharp. And finally, the last segment of the show is the reveals, which are comparatively light, and that's okay. I'm not saying it as a complaint. I'm saying it because there's something that Christina Ariel mentions in this section, which is that more characters and more covers and other things are going to be revealed at Star Wars Celebration next month, so it's probably not a surprise that they're only revealing a little bit on the High Republic show this time around. They show a cover for Path of Deceit, which is the young adult novel that's going to be part of Wave 1 of Phase 2, which will be coming out in November of 2022. So I suppose that suggests that we're going to be getting the novels or the adult and the middle grade novel in October of 2022. So this young adult novel is the one by Tessa Gratton and Justina Ireland. They are working on this together. Apparently they're already friends in real life anyway, so it's wonderful that they're getting to work together. And I did mention that Tessa Gratton was going to get mentioned later on in the show. Well, this is it. This is her first work in the Star Wars universe, and she's getting to do it with Justina Ireland, so that is very cool. And the plot, as described by Christina Ariel, it feels like there's a little bit of a similarity thing to what happened in the High Republic Adventures, in that they're going to focus on the planet Dalna, and on Dalna, people aren't supposed to use the Force, and that was similar to the planet where Zine is in the opening of the High Republic Adventures, I think Trimant 4, if I remember correctly. So in the planet Dalna, you're not supposed to be using the Force, and there's a person who is involved in some sort of leadership role on Dalna who is only known to us so far as the Mother, and she is part of an organization called the Path of the Open Hand. But somebody is going to fall in love with a Pantoran Jedi Padawan, and that's going to create all sorts of issues and drama, I'm sure. And there's also a reveal of someone who is probably very likely some sort of relative of Marchion Rose. And again, we're 150 years in the past for this, so an ancestor of some kind named Marta Rowe. We don't get this information in the High Republic show, but with the corresponding post on StarWars.com, there's additional information that says that Marta Rowe is the polar opposite of Marchion Rowe. She is quiet, calm, peaceful presence in this particular time in the galaxy. Now, there's one final takeaway I want to share with you from the show, and I think it's a really big one in the sense that it ties back to something that the folks promoting this whole mega ginormous storytelling initiative were talking about way back when it was just known as Project Luminous. I do just want to give a quick shout out to our friends at Audible and remind you, if you are interested in audiobooks, and especially Star Wars audiobooks, that you can get a free trial on us by going to audibletrial.com/SW7X7. That free trial includes a 30-day membership to Audible and a free download. So if you're interested in a Star Wars book or any other book, why not? And then you can get one on us. So just go to audibletrial.com/SW7X7 and check it out. So the last big takeaway I wanted to share comes from Charles Soule, where in the midst of the conversation, he says that one of the things we find out in Phase 1 of the High Republic is what the Jedi fear, what they fear most. And that's something that they had been talking about in the whole Project Luminous days when it was like, what did the Jedi fear? And the way Charles Soule puts it is that they would not be able to save anyone anymore, that they would not be able to protect the light anymore. So it's not so much that they would be losing their ability to commune with and to use the Force, but it's about what they are able to do with that power and the way that they've employed it for purposes of good in the galaxy, and not being able to do that anymore is the thing that they fear most. And I suppose that makes sense considering that they are supposed to be of service to the galaxy. It's not just about them, it's about what they can be doing for other people, which is a beautiful sentiment. And that's what we've got for you here on the podcast today. The rundown of the High Republic Show, episode number 8, I guess, if you're not counting the anniversary special. And that's going to do it for today's podcast. It just remains for me to say thank you so much for joining me for it as always, and may the Force be with you wherever in the world you may be.
7x7 is not endorsed or sponsored yet by Lucasfilm Limited, Disney, or 20th Century Fox, and is intended for entertainment and information purposes only. Star Wars, the Star Wars logo, all names and pictures of Star Wars characters, vehicles, and any other Star Wars related items are registered trademarks and/or copyrights of Lucasfilm Limited, or their respective trademark and copyright holders. May the Force be with them. All original content is copyright 2021 by Star Wars 7x7. We hope you love it.